Welcome to the Getting Started with TypeScript series. My name is Dan Wallin. I'm a cloud advocate at Microsoft. And in this video, we're going to focus 100% on interfaces in TypeScript. Interfaces are one of my favorite features. I've had the opportunity to use them in some other languages. So if you've done maybe C++ or C# or Java or even others, there are interfaces there as well, and they're very similar. But if you've never done interfaces, maybe you've heard of it but haven't actually used them, you're probably wondering, first off, what's an interface? So let's clarify that to get things started here. So let's say I have a function called initialize, and it takes a settings. Now, because I'm in TypeScript and I have some kind of strict settings turned on, I'm going to do what I normally wouldn't do. I'm going to make this an any, because I could pass anything for settings. Now, the problem is if I type initialize, now what am I supposed to pass here? What exactly is the object? What properties does it have? Those type of things for this settings object. And back in the day, I remember I used to use jQuery plugins a lot. And they always had some settings you passed in. And the only way to figure that out was either A, go read the docs, and they were pretty good. But if you didn't find the info you needed, then you had to jump to the source code and figure out what you were supposed to pass. Well, we can make this story a lot better with interfaces. Now, I want to emphasize, in a previous video I covered classes, and we certainly could make a class. Maybe we call it settings. And maybe settings has a title. I'll just default it to an empty string for now. And maybe it has a color or something. Let's say blue. All right, now that would work, but notice that actually generates code. And if I don't actually need to new up the settings, if instead I could just pass an object like this, then what if there was a way to not only say the shape of the data that should be passed into here, but also not have any impact on the bundle size of the JavaScript that you see over here to the right? Well, we can do that. We can use an interface to define the shape of this settings object. Now we're going to have to change this a little bit, because now we're going to define the definition of the properties for this interface, this object shape. So we'll say these are both strings. Color is a string. And now notice that this goes red down here. All right, it's basically saying, hey, you passed an empty object. I'm expecting a settings object, which has to have two properties, title and color. Okay, so let's add title. We'll say title, my title. Still doesn't work. Let's mouse over it. It says that property color is missing in type and then the object, but it's required in settings. So we'll go ahead and do color, and we'll put blue here. And there we go. The guardrails go down. We're safe. We're kind of traveling on the road, if you heard me talk about that in previous videos. So what I love about interfaces is it's 0 calories, tastes great. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, 0 calories because it adds nothing to the JavaScript size. They're only for us as developers at development time. That's the 0 calories. Now, the taste great aspect is they taste great because if I mess something up in my code, it's going to tell me. And just like you saw earlier, we're getting an error. And it's going to say color is missing. And then, of course, we can undo that and we'll be good to go. Now, this is the kind of beginning aspect of interfaces. They define the shape of the data. We can then use them as a data type. And now throughout my program, whenever I have settings, if I don't pass title and color, then the guardrails go up and we get compile errors. We get the red squigglies. Now, that's nice, but there's other ways you could use these. If you use classes. Let's say we had a class, and this class is called customer settings or something, but we want it to have a title and a color. Well, we can use a TypeScript keyword called implements to say this class has to satisfy the rules in the interface. So we could say implement settings. And now notice that this goes red because it's missing, and it tells you right there in the error, title and color properties. So I could come on in, and we could just initialize these to empty strings for now. And now notice it goes away. So the guardrails went up, we had to fix it, and then the guardrails go back down because now we're traveling down the right road. So you can use interfaces on classes. You can use them as data types. We could even have a variable here. Let's say let settings of type settings equals, and we could set up an object, and now, again, it's going red because I forgot to put in title and color. So just like we did before, we could say title, we'll just default them here again, and color, and now it goes away. Now let's say that the interface had an optional member, because we can do that. Title, color, and I don't know, what else would you want? Maybe position or something. So let's say position, we'll just say it's a string again, but notice I just broke everything. Okay, this is now invalid because the position is missing. This is now invalid because position is missing. This is now invalid. They're all invalid. So this is great because if anything changes with the shape of the data, I know all the spots in my program to go fix, but we don't have to break it. If position is optional, we can put a question mark. And that means you don't have to use it. Notice all the red goes away. We're good to go. So interfaces define the shape of the data. Officially, they're code contracts. And if you go to the bank and maybe you buy a car, you get a loan for it, you agree to pay a certain amount every month, right? What happens if you don't pay? Nothing good. Well, in this case, they're not going to come repossess your code, thankfully, but the compiler is going to give these build errors if you don't satisfy the contract. Whenever I do this, or whenever I have a class that implements an interface, then I have to satisfy the contract. It's very, very strict, just like a bank would be if you had a loan and didn't pay on that loan. So that's a quick introduction to what interfaces are. Now I want to close out with one other area where I use these a lot. Most of the time I'm getting data from services such as a RESTful service. And when that object comes back, that JSON data comes back, I don't really know what's in it, especially if I'm new to the project, right? I have to oftentimes go into the developer tools in Chrome or Edge or Firefox, and I have to look at the network tab and figure out what was the data that came back. Well, if maybe I'm the team lead and I knew the data coming back from that service, I could make an interface that our team can now use. And now, let's say it's a settings object, now I know that I could be getting title, color, and optionally position back from that call. So in the case of that type of scenario, maybe we have a function called getSettings, and it returns a settings object. And now notice that I have to return a settings object here. Well, let's pretend that we fetch the data from a, we'll just say RESTful service here. Well, now I know what the return type, what the shape of that return type data is going to be. And whatever I return from here needs to follow that shape of the data. Now, whoever calls this, they know what to expect. There's no guessing. There's no having to look at the network tab, all those types of things. Now, I'm just going to simulate it. We'll go ahead and do the following. In fact, we'll just copy this one right here. And now notice, once I fix it up a little, that all the red will go away. Now in this case, we're basically saying get settings, but I forgot to put the parentheses. So let's fix that. And now we're good to go. So there's a few examples of where an interface can be used. So to review, we could use them just as types for the type of a parameter, the type of a variable, or even the return type of a function. We can also use them on classes to say this class must satisfy this interface. And you can even implement multiple interfaces by putting a comma and then, interface 1, interface 2. The more you implement, the more code you have to write if I have these interfaces, but you can do that as well. So that's a quick look at code contracts or interfaces. And yes, there's even more we could talk about, but in this short video, I hope this gets you started thinking about what an interface is, understanding why I like to say it's 0 calories, tastes great. Again, it doesn't impact our JavaScript size at all. It's a development-only feature. So I use interfaces a lot. You probably will too as you get more comfortable with them, but I hope that helps get you started. So please like and subscribe. I have some more videos coming up, and we'll see you in the next video.